Who goes there? Please, you must know I bear you no ill will. I was simply doing what I thought was right. Wait. You are not my jailers. Visitors. Oh, my apologies. I wish I had something to offer you. I usually keep something on hand for guests, but it's difficult to smuggle a roast pig into the reef. The reef, Oʻahu's finest prison. I have been confined here for nearly 30 days. You cannot know how grateful I am that you have come. In the last days, I even welcomed death as a relief. But the sight of friendly faces renews my strength. As the old Hawaiians say, "Ua ola I ka pane a ke aloha." There is life in a kindly reply. I'm sure you're wondering why it is that I dwell in such a dark place. Have I committed theft? Murder? No, nothing so callous. My name is John Cummins, and under the laws of the Republic of Hawaii, I have been accused of high treason. I was born High Chief John Adams Kuakini Cummins on Oʻahu in 1835. A strange name, I know. My life has been a melding of cultures. Part old Hawaii, represented by my mother, High Chiefess Kaumaka'okane, cousin of Kamehameha I, and part industrialized West, represented by my father, Thomas Jefferson Cummins Jr., an Englishman from Massachusetts. I would spend my days attending an English school and my evenings around a fire, eating poi and kalua pig, while my grandfather told stories of old Hawaii. Gifted with a sharp memory, I loved learning both Hawaiian proverbs and Shakespearean sonnets. As a child, I identified more with my mother's side. One of my first recollections was being dandled on the knee of King Kalakaua III himself. Now, when I was old enough, I chose to accompany my father to his cattle ranch. A successful businessman, father had purchased a parcel of land in Waimanalo for the construction of our family home, monologue, or as the Americans call it, Rosemount. Father had been a shipmaster in the years prior to settling in Hawaii, a career that brought him into contact with whalers, merchantmen, wealthy landowners who demanded large amounts of beef and fine horses. It wasn't long until I started to serve father as foreman, dealing in both the city markets and the livery stables, and dealing with some of father's more interesting acquaintances myself. Now, prior to father's leasing of Waimanalo in 1847 from King Kamehameha III, the valley was covered with breadfruit, mountain apple, kukui, and coconut trees, about 100 grass hale, perched on the dry land, surrounded by sweet potatoes and sugar cane. Sadly, however, our cattle and horses overran these kuleana, and soon the valley was covered with our animals. But these cattle brought such rewards. For as long as I can remember, we had money to give, and father taught me the will to give it. Lavish Hawaiian-style living became synonymous with the Cummins name. Cavalcades of horsemen would brave the dangers of the steep gully in order that they might reach the rich valley where we kept open house for anyone who came our way. Ship captains, foreign army officers, poor Kanaka, even royalty, and we served rich foods by the wagon load. Hogs, ducks, turkeys, mountains of poi, and the rarest vintages, the finest drink one could acquire on the coast. 300 torches brought life and light to the evening as hula troops performed one after the other until the sun came up and it was time to begin the festivities anew. Rosemount even became a favorite haunt of Queen Emma and later King Kalakaua. And in all of this, Father taught me to never ask for anything in return. As they say, no kind deed has ever lacked its reward. I was even affectionately titled by my guests the Prince of Entertainers and the Entertainer of Princes. It was at these grand parties, however, that foreigners often sought my ear and opinion as to the future of our unique and strategic homeland. Frenchmen, Englishmen, Americans, all asserted that their flags would someday fly high and proud over our island home. Unfortunately for them, however, I believed it my duty as a Hawaiian to support the crown. And therefore, it made perfect sense that I should try my hand at politics. In 1873, King Kamehameha V died without naming an heir, and so it became necessary, on the advice of our Western friends, to hold an election. I poured my heart and soul into ensuring that the most honorable and noble man be chosen as our next monarch. I first aided William Lunalilo's ascension to the throne, and when he passed away, I campaigned for David Kalakaua. Our new king was so pleased with my efforts in the events that in the elections that he sought my counsel in regard to a problem that had been plaguing the kingdom for years. Now, in the early 1870s, the Hawaiian economy faced a grim truth. We had nothing of value to offer our trading partners. Now, the kingdom first prospered from sandalwood, and then as a trading port for whalers, and then most recently as a supply port for the gold miners of California. Unfortunately, greedy merchantmen exploited these things, which led to the inevitable market crash. Without any products to export, Hawaii ran the risk of becoming another forgettable backwater trading port in the eyes of the Western world. Many investors believed that sugarcane was the future of Hawaii's economy. That is, if we could afford to export it. For years, the kingdom had been trying to negotiate a treaty of reciprocity with the United States to abolish that country's crippling import duties. Conditions were ripe for change, however, after Kalakaua's inauguration. The United States had just finished a bitter civil war, and in the decade following the war, they found that their supply of sugar from the South had diminished, and their coffers were uncomfortably empty. Together, we produced a new Treaty of Reciprocity, which Kalakaua himself took to Washington. Though met with staunch opposition, the treaty was ratified by Congress in 1876, ushering in an era of rapid industrialization in the islands. The effects were almost instantaneous. Suddenly, fields of green cane and water flumes, siphons and tunnels to sate the crop's ravenous thirst, covered previously barren fields and hills. The islands, already a rich melting pot of diversity, flooded with immigrants. Europeans, Japanese, Chinese, Polynesians settled on these sugar plantations, and cultures clashed and melded in the fields, united by a common cause. They wore the same clothes. They woke up at the same time. They went home to the sound of the pauana whistle, to houses of the same color. Their children attended the same schools and grew up respecting the glorious diversity that these islands boasted. Now, prior to the treaty, just a handful of plantations covered the island. By 1885, there were 90. I even converted our family cattle ranch to a humble plantation of our own, which I dubbed the Waimanalo Sugar Company. Now, with my own business thriving on family land, I was free to devote my time to helping the king. Kalakaua appointed me to the Privy Council, the House of Nobles, and eventually to the position of Minister of Foreign Affairs. Tragedy struck the kingdom, however, when Kalakaua died suddenly while away on business. As his loyal servant and friend, I had been given the grim honor of supervising and planning his memorial service. A sad day for the kingdom. Perhaps saddest of all, however, because of what it meant for our future. I will love and respect the crown until the day I die. But I struggle to find kind words to say of Queen Liliuokalani, and I'm sure in her eyes the feeling was mutual. One of her first acts as queen was to demand my resignation from the cabinet. I willingly and respectfully obeyed her decision. Then in January of 1893, the Kingdom of Hawaii was changed forever. A group of annexationists took hold of Ali'iolani Hale, our judiciary building, and announced a new provisional government, proclaiming Hawaii as a territory of the United States of America. I was shocked when the Queen summoned me, of all people, into her chambers during these dark days. She requested my help, asking me to go to Washington and deliver a final plea of restoration. "Oni pa'a," she said. "Stand firm." I did. But away, our mission was a failure. I returned to the islands with a heavy heart and a tired soul. How is it that someone who so loves his country could be accused of treason, you may ask? A friend should bear his friend's infirmities. Shakespeare once said, such was my lot. A group of men, many of whom I considered close friends, enraged by the installation of the provisional government, formed a counter-revolution in secret. This force of royalists engaged in 3 days of fierce fighting with government troops. They were outnumbered, outsupplied, outmaneuvered. It was a futile and foolish endeavor. I numbered my friends on all sides and among all classes, and I knew that a civil war would only bring more heartache to these islands. The legendary Cummins hospitality was sorely abused in the days leading up to this conflict. An American, Major W.T. Seward, came to Rosemount years ago, sick and weak, in desperate need of help. I was happy to accommodate him. He even proved to be very useful. He served as my eyes, ears, and mouthpiece on the plantation, and he soon became more than just a simple secretary. He was a dear friend. But in the months that led up to the incident that landed me in my present position, Seward had gone on a quiet trip on his own to California. By the time I realized his goal, it was too late. Though it was denied by many, chiefly the Queen herself, Major Seward told me that he received a letter from Liliuokalani instructing him to go to California and purchase arms for the uprising. I was very sorry when Seward had done this thing. I told him that as he calls Rosemount his home, I was afraid it would bring trouble, not only to him, but to myself and to my children as well. He says to me, "Oh, don't you worry. All of the blame would be attached to him. And yet here I stand, blamed as an accessory." I stood by and I did nothing. As Seward used my horses, my servants, even one of my steamers, the SS Waimanalo, as pawns in his bloody game. And yet, I simply did not have the stomach to condemn my friend. I've submitted my statement of events before a tribunal, and if the contents therein find me guilty, then I am guilty. When asked for a plea, I knew not what to say. My whole life, I've lived by rules, a moral code. I've loved all, trusted few, and wronged None. But this conflict, it has me troubled. Were we wrong to fight for our sovereignty? Or perhaps we didn't fight hard enough. Perhaps I remained silent, not for Seward's sake, but out of hope that he and his men would prevail. Am I guilty? Am I innocent? I suppose that is for the court to decide. But for the time being, here I sit in a felon's cell, wondering what will be my ultimate fate. Shall I rot here for the rest of my days? Or will I be set free, never to regain the trust of my friends and neighbors again? Only time will tell. Go now. I've taken too much of your time. Make the most of your freedom so that I might share in it with you. Once again, I thank you all for your kindness. I will never forget this. A gloomy peace this morning with it brings. The sun, for sorrow, will not show his head. Go hence to have more talk of these sad things. Some shall be pardoned, and some punished. Good night.